license, and registration. The black woman in the driver's seat kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. Her voice stayed calm. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I was stopped? Did I say you could talk?" The flashlight hit her face like a slap. "Fancy car for a black woman? Let me guess. Stolen, or did your baby daddy buy it for you?" His partner snickered. A crowd slowed down to watch. Phones appeared. Someone started live streaming, but not one person stepped forward. Not one voice said, "Stop. People like you don't belong in this neighborhood." He leaned closer. "You need to learn your place." He didn't notice the man in the passenger seat. He didn't see the strange smile slowly spreading across that man's face. Not anger, not fear, just curiosity, like watching a mouse walk into a trap. In a few moments, Officer Ryan Hayes would discover that the black man he ignored held his entire career in his hands. Everything had been perfect just moments before. The black Cadillac Escalade glided down Westheimer Road like a shadow, cutting through the golden Houston sunset. Behind the wheel, Dr. Denise Patterson allowed herself a rare moment of peace. Her surgical scrubs were still damp from a long shift of life and death decisions. Her shoulders ached, her eyes burned from exhaustion, but she was smiling. It had been a good day, a long day, but a good one. In the passenger seat, her husband Michael sat with a tablet propped against his knee. The screen glowed blue in the fading light, illuminating the strong lines of his face. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man whose presence commanded attention without saying a word. When he walked into a room, people noticed. When he spoke, they listened. There was something about the way he carried himself, back straight, eyes always scanning, every word measured and deliberate, that suggested authority, power, control. But right now in this car, he was just Michael. He was just the man Denise had married years ago in a small church on the south side of Houston. Just the husband who still brought her coffee every morning and fell asleep during movies every Friday night. "Rough shift?" he asked without looking up from his tablet. Denise laughed softly. "You could say that." Rough didn't begin to cover it. The day had started with an emergency page. A 6-year-old boy named Ethan had arrived with a heart murmur that was getting worse by the minute. Denise had him in surgery quickly, his tiny chest open on her table, his life literally in her hands. Soon he was stable. Later he was awake and asking for ice cream. The second surgery was harder. A premature baby, just 2 pounds 3 ounces, whose heart wasn't pumping correctly. The procedure required instruments so small they looked like toys. One wrong move, one tremor in her fingers, and that baby would never see her first birthday. Later, the baby was breathing on her own. Her parents wept in the hallway when Denise gave them the news. But it was the third surgery that stayed with her, the one that would keep her up at night for weeks to come. A 7-year-old girl named Olivia. She had been playing soccer when she collapsed on the field. Her lung had spontaneously collapsed, a rare condition called tension pneumothorax. Without immediate intervention, she would have been dead within minutes. By the time Olivia reached Texas Children's Hospital, she was barely breathing. Her skin had turned blue. Her parents were screaming in the waiting room, begging anyone who would listen to save their daughter. Denise had scrubbed in immediately. Hours of surgery, hours of fighting against death itself, hours of refusing to let go of that little girl's life. When Olivia's eyes fluttered open in the recovery room, when she asked in a weak voice where her mom was, when she smiled that confused, groggy smile, Denise had walked calmly into the hallway, found an empty supply closet, and cried until she couldn't breathe. That was the job. That was always the job. carrying the weight of other people's lives, bearing the responsibility of being the last line of defense between a child and death. Thousands of children. That was how many lives Dr. Denise Patterson had saved in her career. Thousands of tiny hearts that kept beating because of her hands. Thousands of families who got more time together because she refused to give up. Tonight, those same hands gripped the leather steering wheel of her husband's expensive car. The usual, she told Michael, keeping her voice light. Saved a few lives, nothing special. He chuckled. It was their private joke. In the Patterson household, saving lives was just another day at the office. Michael's phone buzzed on the center console. The screen lit up with a name, Deputy Chief Anderson. He glanced at it, then silenced the call without answering. Denise raised an eyebrow. Work, personnel issue. Someone I need to deal with on Monday. She noticed the way his jaw tightened when he said it, the way his fingers gripped the tablet a little harder. Whatever he was reading, it bothered him. On the screen, partially visible, she caught a glimpse of a file header. Hayes R. Complaint Review. She didn't ask. After many years of marriage, she knew when Michael needed space to process something, he would tell her when he was ready. What Denise didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that her husband had been reviewing complaints against Officer Ryan Hayes recently. 17 complaints, documented misconduct, excessive force, racial profiling, unlawful searches, intimidation, planting evidence. Every single complaint had been dismissed. Every investigation had been closed without action. The pattern was clear to anyone who bothered to look. Someone had been protecting Ryan Hayes. Michael had traced the protection to its source. Sergeant Victor Hayes, Ryan's uncle, the supervising officer who signed off on every dismissal, who buried every complaint, who made sure his nephew never faced consequences. A meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Internal Affairs. The topic, termination proceedings against Officer Ryan Hayes. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Michael set the tablet aside and reached for his wife's hand. His fingers were warm, familiar, safe. Tonight is ours, he said softly. Everything else can wait. She squeezed back. I'm holding you to that. In the center console, almost invisible beneath a stack of napkins and a worn paperback novel, sat a black leather badge holder. The gold shield inside caught the fading sunlight whenever the car turned a corner. Chief of Police, Houston Police Department, Michael A. Patterson. Michael never wore it off duty. Tonight, he was just a husband. Just a black man in an expensive car driving through one of Houston's wealthiest neighborhoods. That was exactly how the world would see him. The blue and red lights appeared in the rearview mirror. Denise's hands moved before her brain caught up. Muscle memory. Survival instinct. The choreography of being black in America. Interior light on. Window down. Hands visible on the steering wheel. No sudden movements. No reaching for anything. No giving anyone an excuse. We're being pulled over, she said quietly. Michael looked up. His eyes went to the mirror, then to his wife, then back to the mirror. You weren't speeding. Does that matter? The question hung in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating. They both knew the answer. Over the years of driving, Denise had been pulled over multiple times. Never once had she received a ticket. Never once had she broken a single law. But she had learned. Oh, how she had learned. The patrol car had been parked at a gas station. It pulled out the moment Denise's Escalade passed by. No radar gun, no traffic violation, Just a black woman in an expensive car. Michael's hand drifted toward the badge in the console, then stopped. A thought crystallized. A decision formed. He could end this before it started. One flash of that badge and whatever officer was approaching would go pale. Apologies would pour out. The whole thing would disappear. But then what? Then this would become a story about privilege, about how the police chief got special treatment, about how the rules didn't apply to important people. What about everyone else? What about all the other black women who got pulled over on this road, the ones who didn't have a chief in the passenger seat? Michael wanted to see. He needed to know. What would this officer do when he thought no one important was watching? So he left the badge where it was, and he waited. Officer Ryan Hayes approached the Escalade like a predator who had spotted wounded prey. His boots struck the pavement with deliberate weight. His flashlight was already blazing, sweeping across the car's windows, even though the summer sun hadn't fully set. His other hand rested near his belt. Not quite on his weapon, but close enough to remind everyone who held the power here. He was on the Houston Police Department, the kind of cop who talked about cleaning up the streets like it was a sacred mission. His personnel file told a different story. 17 complaints. Excessive force against unarmed suspects. Racial profiling during traffic stops. Unlawful searches conducted without consent or probable cause. Evidence that mysteriously appeared in suspects' vehicles after Hayes searched them. Not one complaint had ever resulted in discipline. Not one investigation had ever moved forward. Every single accusation had been dismissed, buried, made to disappear. Sergeant Victor Hayes, Ryan's uncle, had made sure of that. Ryan believed he was untouchable, invincible. Above the law he was sworn to enforce. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Behind him, Officer Claire Bennett hung back near the patrol car. She was fresh out of the academy and early in her field training. Her body camera was active, a small green light blinking steadily on her chest. She had seen Ryan do this before. The aggressive approach, the demeaning questions, the way he seemed to enjoy making people squirm. It made her uncomfortable. But she said nothing. She never said anything. Ryan reached Denise's window. He shone the flashlight directly into her face, an unnecessary act of dominance given the remaining daylight. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation, no courtesy. Just a demand. Denise kept her hands visible as she slowly reached for her purse. She moved with deliberate care, announcing each action before she made it. I'm reaching into my purse for my wallet. My license is inside. She handed over her documents with steady hands. Years of performing surgery on children's hearts had taught her to stay calm under impossible pressure. Hayes studied the license, his lip curled into a sneer. Dr. Denise Patterson. He pronounced the word doctor like it was profanity, like it was impossible, like it was a joke. A doctor driving an expensive Escalade. He made a show of looking around the interior. The leather seats, the wood trim, the subtle technology integrated into every surface. Let me guess. His voice dripped with contempt. Some kind of free clinic handing out pills to crackheads and welfare queens. Denise's expression didn't change. Her voice remained level. I'm a pediatric cardiac surgeon at Texas Children's Hospital. I specialize in congenital heart defects. Today I performed 3 surgeries, including a life-saving procedure on a 7-year-old girl whose lung collapsed during a soccer game. She paused. May I ask why I was stopped, officer? Hayes ignored the question completely. His flashlight swung toward the passenger seat, briefly illuminating Michael's face. 1 second. That was how long the light lingered. 1 second of looking at a black man in civilian clothes and deciding he wasn't worth a second glance. "Who's this?" Hayes's voice was dismissive. "The boyfriend. Her husband." Hayes laughed, a short, ugly sound that dripped with disbelief. "Husband." He dragged the word out. "Right, sure. Whatever you say." He said it like the concept was impossible. Like a black surgeon couldn't have a legitimate marriage. Like these people didn't belong here in this neighborhood, in this car, on this street. Michael sat perfectly still. His face revealed nothing. But behind those calm eyes, a decision was forming. He could end this right now. He could reach for the badge in the console, announce his title, and watch this officer crumble into apologies. But something stopped him. He thought about all the people who didn't have a badge to flash. All the black women who got pulled over and had no protection. All the citizens who faced officers like Hayes and had no recourse. He needed to see. He needed to know the truth. What would Ryan Hayes do when he believed no one important was watching? So Michael stayed silent and he observed. Hayes turned back to Denise. "Know why I stopped you, Doc?" The title was soaked in sarcasm. "I have no idea, officer. I wasn't speeding. My turn signals work. My registration is current. I've committed no traffic violation." "Wrong." Hayes stepped closer, his shadow falling over her like a threat. "You failed to signal when changing lanes back there. That's a moving violation in Texas. Fine up to $1,000. It was a lie. Denise always signaled. Every lane change, every turn, every time. It was automatic, reflexive. The habit of a woman who knew that any small mistake could become an excuse. But she also knew that Hayes's dashcam had malfunctioned. The investigation would later reveal that he had manually disabled it before initiating the stop. This wasn't his first fabricated violation. It wouldn't have been his last. "I signaled, officer. I always signal." Hayes's eyes narrowed. His jaw tightened. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm telling you what happened." Something dangerous flickered across his face. The wounded pride of a man who wasn't used to being challenged. The anger of someone whose authority had been questioned. "Get out of the car. I have the right to know." I said, "Get out now." His hand moved to his belt, closer to his weapon, a threat disguised as a casual gesture. Denise knew what that meant. Every black person in America knew what that meant. The moment when a routine stop becomes something else entirely. The moment when your survival depends on the next 30 seconds. She opened her door slowly, carefully, her hands visible the entire time. And in the passenger seat, Michael Patterson made his final decision. This had gone far enough. Denise stepped onto the pavement with the careful movements of someone navigating a minefield. Her hands stayed visible. Her posture remained non-threatening. Every gesture was slow, deliberate, designed to give no excuse. "Turn around," Hayes commanded. "Hands on the hood." "Officer, I'd like to know what I'm being charged with." "Obstruction, failure to comply, and I'm adding suspicious behavior because I feel like it." He grabbed her arm hard and spun her around. "Now, hands on the hood before I add resisting arrest." The metal was warm from the engine. Denise felt it press against her palms as Hayes shoved her forward. Her cheeks scraped against the polished surface. These hands saved a child's life this morning, she thought. These hands have saved thousands of children. Now they were being treated like weapons. Hayes began his pat-down. His hands moved slowly, invasively, lingering in places they had no reason to linger. It wasn't a search, it was a violation. A crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Cars slowed to watch the spectacle. Phones appeared everywhere, recording, streaming, capturing every moment. Someone laughed. Someone else made a crude comment. The live stream comments flooded in. A mix of outrage and mockery and laughing emojis. But not one person stepped forward. Not one voice said, "Stop." Hayes pulled out his handcuffs. "I'm a surgeon," Denise said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I need my hands for my work. I operate on children. Please don't. Should have thought about that before you decided to get difficult." Click. The cold steel bit into her wrists, tighter than necessary, tight enough to leave bruises, tight enough to remind her who was in control. Denise didn't cry out. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. But something inside her cracked. Some small piece of dignity that she had fought her whole life to protect. She was a doctor, a healer, a woman who had dedicated her entire existence to saving lives. And here she was, face pressed against her own car, handcuffed by a man who saw nothing when he looked at her, except the color of her skin. In the passenger seat, Michael had seen enough. His hand moved to the door handle. The door opened. "Officer!" Michael's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "I need you to stop what you're doing right now." Hayes spun around, flashlight aimed at Michael's chest. "Who the hell told you to get out of the car?" "That woman is my wife." Michael stepped forward slowly, his hands visible at his sides. "You have no probable cause for this stop. You have no legal basis for this detention, and you have absolutely no right to treat her this way." Hayes's face contorted with rage. This wasn't supposed to happen. Suspects were supposed to be compliant, scared, submissive. They weren't supposed to challenge him. "I don't give a damn who you are." Hayes stepped closer, his hand moving toward his belt. "This is my scene, my stop, my rules. Get back in the vehicle right now, or you're going to join her." "This isn't a scene. This is an illegal traffic stop conducted by an officer who disabled his own dashcam before pulling us over." Something flickered in Hayes's eyes. A flash of recognition. A moment of fear. How did this man know about the dashcam? But the fear quickly transformed into anger, aggression, the desperate fury of a cornered animal. Behind him, Officer Claire Bennett shifted nervously. "Ryan," she said quietly, "maybe we should wait for backup. Something doesn't feel right about this." "Shut up, Bennett. I've got this under control." He turned back to Michael, drew himself up to his full height, tried to project authority. "Last chance. Get back in that car or you're under arrest." "On what charge?" "Interference with police business. Obstruction of justice. I'll think of more on the way to the station." Michael didn't move. His voice remained calm, almost eerily calm. "You don't want to do this, officer." "Is that a threat?" Hayes stepped closer, his face inches from Michael's. "Are you threatening a police officer?" "I'm giving you an opportunity. Walk away right now. Uncuff my wife. Apologize for your behavior and maybe you'll still have a career tomorrow." Hayes laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You've got nerve. I'll give you that. But you picked the wrong cop to mess with." He grabbed Michael's arm. "Turn around." Hands behind your back. Don't touch me. Resisting arrest, Hayes shouted for the cameras. Everyone see that? He's resisting. He wrenched Michael's arms backward with unnecessary force. The handcuffs came out. Click, click. Chief of Police Michael Patterson, with many years on the force and recently in this position, was now on his knees on a public sidewalk, handcuffed by one of his own officers, an officer who still had absolutely no idea. Hayes shoved Michael down next to Denise, husband and wife, side by side on the hot pavement, their wrists bound behind their backs. The crowd had swelled to nearly 60 people now. The live streams were exploding. Thousands of viewers watched in real time as a cop humiliated what appeared to be an innocent black couple. Comments flooded in. Some expressed outrage, others laughed. None of them understood what they were really witnessing. Hayes stood over his prisoners like a conquering hero, his chest puffed out, his chin raised. The absolute picture of a man who believed he had won. 2 suspects, he announced loudly for the cameras. 1 stolen vehicle. Hell of a night. He grabbed his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 52. I have 2 suspects under arrest at Westheimer and Voss. Possible vehicle theft. Both suspects are in custody. Requesting transport. Copy. Unit 52. Backup and transport en route. ETA 4 minutes. Arrest, not detention, not investigation. Ryan Hayes had just formally arrested the police chief of Houston, and he was proud of himself. Denise turned her head toward her husband, her cheek scraped against the rough pavement. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Michael's eyes never left Hayes. "This will be over soon." "How do you know?" "Because backup is coming and at least one of those officers will recognize me." Before Denise could respond, Hayes walked to the rear of the Escalade. He popped the trunk without asking permission. Another Fourth Amendment violation to add to the growing list. Inside the trunk were 3 items. A gym bag filled with workout clothes, a case of bottled water, and a folded American flag in a glass display case. Hayes picked up the flag, examined it like it was evidence of a crime. "What's this?" He held it up for the crowd to see. Steal this from a veteran's funeral? A parade? A gasp went through the witnesses. "That's a burial flag." Someone shouted. "Have you lost your mind?" Denise's voice cracked for the first time all night. "That flag belonged to my father-in-law, Staff Sergeant Robert Patterson. 30 years in the United States Army. He served in Vietnam and Desert Storm. He earned a Bronze Star and 2 Purple Hearts. He died not long ago surrounded by his family. Tears streamed down her face. That flag was folded by soldiers in full dress uniform. It was handed to my mother-in-law with the words, 'On behalf of a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service.'" She drew a shaky breath. "It's the most sacred thing we own." Hayes looked at the flag, then at Denise. Then he dropped it back into the trunk like it was garbage. Probably stole that, too. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside Michael Patterson. The curiosity was gone. The clinical detachment was gone. The desire to observe and document gone. What replaced it was cold, absolute fury. This man had mocked his wife, had degraded her profession, had violated her rights, and now he had desecrated the memory of Michael's father. Staff Sergeant Robert Patterson had bled for this country, had sacrificed years of his life defending the freedoms that Ryan Hayes was now trampling. That flag had been folded with precision and reverence. It had been presented with honor. It represented everything good and noble about service and sacrifice. And this officer, this disgrace to the badge, had thrown it away like trash. Michael closed his eyes, breathed deeply, let the rage settle into something harder, colder, more useful. When he opened his eyes, his decision was made. Ryan Hayes wouldn't just lose his job. He would lose everything. The sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights appeared around the corner. Backup had arrived, and with it, the truth was about to be revealed. 2 patrol cars rounded the corner and pulled to a stop behind Hayes' vehicle. 4 officers emerged. The first among them was Sergeant Kevin Morrison, recently promoted by Chief Michael Patterson personally. Morrison had received the email just recently. He remembered the exact wording. "Congratulations on your well-deserved promotion. Your dedication to community policing represents the best of what this department can be." The email had been signed, Michael A. Patterson, Chief of Police. Morrison approached the scene with professional calm. He surveyed the situation. 2 suspects on the ground, Hayes standing over them, a crowd of witnesses, phones everywhere. Then his eyes landed on the man in handcuffs. His feet stopped moving. His blood turned to ice. "Bennett." He grabbed Claire's arm, pulling her aside. His voice was barely a whisper. "The man on the ground. Look at him. Really look." Bennett glanced over. Hayes' suspects. He said they were driving a stolen. "Look at his face." She looked. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. The color drained from her cheeks. "Oh my God. That's Chief Patterson." Morrison's voice was strangled. "Michael Patterson, Chief of Police. Hayes just arrested our Chief of Police." Bennett's hand flew to her mouth. Her body camera suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "He doesn't know," she breathed. "Ryan has no idea." "No, he doesn't." Morrison started moving, but he's about to find out. He crossed the distance to the scene in 5 long strides. "Hayes, stop everything you're doing right now." Hayes turned, annoyance written across his face. This was his moment, his glory. He didn't appreciate the interruption. "Morrison, what's your problem? I've got everything under. Do you have any idea who you just arrested?" 2 suspects, stolen vehicle, resisting arrest, open and shut. Morrison ignored him completely. He dropped to one knee beside Michael, his hands already searching for the handcuff key. "Chief Patterson, sir, are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" The word detonated like a bomb. "Chief." Hayes' mouth opened. No sound came out. His brain tried to process the information, tried to reconcile the man kneeling in handcuffs with the photograph that hung in every precinct in the city. The photograph he walked past every single day. The photograph he never bothered to look at closely, because all black faces looked the same to him. "Chief." The word came out as a croak. "What do you mean, Chief?" Morrison was fumbling with the handcuffs, his fingers trembling so badly he could barely hold the key. "Chief Michael Patterson, Houston Police Department, the man whose signature is on my promotion letter, the man who runs this entire department." He finally got the cuffs off. Michael rose slowly to his feet, rotating his wrists. Red marks circled his skin where the metal had bitten in. "The man," Morrison continued, "that you just arrested." Hayes' face underwent a transformation that would haunt witnesses for years to come. First came confusion, his brow furrowed, trying desperately to make the pieces fit. Then recognition. slow, horrible recognition as the face in front of him finally matched the photograph in his memory. Then terror, pure animal terror, as the full weight of what he had done came crashing down like an avalanche. Chief Patterson. His voice climbed an octave. But I couldn't. He couldn't finish the sentence. He couldn't say what he was really thinking. You're just a black man. Just another face. Just another nobody who doesn't matter. That's what he had seen. That's all he had allowed himself to see. Michael stood motionless for a long moment. He let the silence stretch. Let Hayes squirm. Let the reality sink in. Then he spoke. I am Michael Patterson. His voice carried across the crowd with perfect clarity. Not shouting, not angry, just absolute. Chief of Police, Houston Police Department. With many years on the force, recently in this position, he took one step toward Hayes, then another. And you, Officer Hayes, just arrested your commanding officer. Hayes stumbled backward. His legs seemed to lose all strength. Sir, I didn't know. I didn't recognize you. The light was I never. That's exactly the problem. Michael's voice cut like surgical steel. You didn't recognize me. And you know why? Because you never looked. You never bothered to see me as a person. You saw a black man in a nice car. And you saw a target. Another step forward. Hayes retreated again. My wife is a pediatric cardiac surgeon. She has saved thousands of children's lives. Today alone, she operated on 3 kids, including a 7-year-old girl who would be dead right now, if not for her hands. He gestured toward Denise, who was being helped to her feet by Morrison. You threw her against the hood of her own car. You called her a thief. You questioned her right to exist in her own neighborhood. You handcuffed her hands, the hands that saved children's lives, because the color of her skin offended you. And you had no idea who I was. You didn't care who I was because to you, we're all the same, all invisible, all worthless, all guilty until proven innocent. And sometimes not even then. Hayes's knees buckled. He sank to the pavement, not because anyone pushed him, because his body simply gave up. The weight of his actions pressed down on him like a physical force. He ended up kneeling on the exact same spot where he had forced Michael and Denise to kneel. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. Morrison helped Denise over. Her wrists were raw and red, already darkening into bruises. Dr. Patterson, ma'am, I am so deeply sorry for what happened here tonight. The apology should come from him. Denise's eyes locked onto Hayes. Not from you. She walked toward the kneeling officer. Her surgical scrubs were dirty now, stained with grime from the pavement. Her face bore the marks of humiliation, but her voice was steel. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. Hayes looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. Please, I have a family. I have 2 kids. So did Olivia, the 7-year-old I operated on this morning. She has parents who love her. She has a little brother who looks up to her. She almost didn't get to grow up because her lung collapsed on a soccer field. Denise crouched down to meet his eyes. I saved her. I gave her back to her family. That's what I do. That's what these hands do. She held up her wrists, showing him the red marks from his handcuffs. What do your hands do, Officer Hayes? What have you ever given anyone except fear, except humiliation, except the knowledge that a badge can be used as a weapon against the innocent? She stood up and walked back to her husband's side. Hayes remained on his knees, sobbing. The crowd had grown massive now. 70, 80, maybe 100 people. News vans were arriving. Cameras and microphones materialized. Helicopters circled overhead. But something had shifted in the atmosphere. The laughing emojis were gone from the live stream comments. The mocking had stopped. What replaced it was something else entirely. Outrage, solidarity, a collective recognition that what they had witnessed was fundamentally wrong. Someone in the crowd started clapping. One person, then two, then 10. Then a wave of applause rolling through the witnesses like thunder. Justice, karma, get him, Chief. Michael raised his hand and the crowd fell silent. I need everyone to hear what I'm about to say. The cameras zoomed in, the microphones extended, every phone angled toward him. Tonight, my wife and I were arrested by an officer in the department I lead. My wife, Dr. Denise Patterson, is the surgeon who has saved thousands of children's lives. Tonight, she was pulled from her car, thrown against the hood, searched, and handcuffed like a common criminal. He paused, let the words sink in. Not because she broke any law, not because she posed any threat, but because she is a black woman driving a nice car in a wealthy neighborhood, because Officer Ryan Hayes decided that people who look like us don't belong here. His gaze swept across the crowd, the cameras, the witnesses. I could tell you this was an isolated incident, a single bad apple, an unfortunate misunderstanding. He shook his head slowly. But that would be a lie, and I am done lying to protect a broken system. He turned to address the cameras directly. Officer Ryan Hayes has 17 complaints in his personnel file. 17 documented incidents of misconduct over his time on the force. Excessive force. Racial profiling. Unlawful searches. Fabricated evidence. The crowd murmured. The reporters scribbled. Every single complaint was dismissed, buried, made to disappear by Officer Hayes' supervising sergeant, his own uncle. This wasn't a failure of one officer. This was a failure of an entire system designed to protect abusers rather than serve citizens. He paused. That system ends tonight. Officer Hayes is suspended immediately, pending a full investigation. His badge and weapon have been confiscated. I am personally referring this case to the Federal Department of Justice. Not local prosecutors, not internal affairs. Federal prosecutors who have no connection to this department because this case will not be buried. This officer will not be protected. Justice will be served. Officer. Claire Bennett stepped forward from the shadows. She had been standing apart from Hayes, watching everything unfold. Early in her time on the job, months of seeing her training officer profile and harass and intimidate. Months of saying nothing. That ended tonight. Chief Patterson, sir. Michael turned. Bennett took a deep breath. This was the moment, the choice that would define her entire career. I want to state for the record that I witnessed everything tonight. Every word Officer Hayes spoke. Every action he took. And I failed to intervene when I should have. Her voice wavered, but didn't break. My body camera recorded the entire incident from the moment we initiated the stop. The footage is automatically uploaded to department servers. It cannot be deleted, altered, or tampered with. She straightened her spine. And I am prepared to testify under oath in court before God and everyone to everything I saw tonight. Hayes's head snapped up. His red-rimmed eyes found his partner. Claire, please. We're partners. You're supposed to have my back. We were partners. Bennett's voice hardened. But I won't protect someone who doesn't deserve the badge. Not anymore. She turned back to Michael. I know I should have spoken up sooner. I know my silence made me complicit. But I want to be part of the solution now. Whatever that takes, whatever it costs. Michael studied her for a long moment. What you did tonight, staying silent, was wrong. You understand that? Yes, sir. I do. But what you're doing now takes courage. The kind of courage this department desperately needs. He extended his hand. Bennett shook it. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. The crowd erupted in applause once more. Hayes was pulled to his feet by Morrison. His own handcuffs, the same ones he had used on Denise, were placed around his wrists. Ryan Hayes, you are under arrest. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law. False arrest. Assault. Evidence tampering. Filing a false police report. Morrison began reciting the Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As they led him toward the patrol car, Hayes turned back one final time. Chief, please, I'm sorry. Michael's voice was ice. You're right about one thing, Officer Hayes. You didn't know who I was, but you knew my wife was black. You knew she was in a nice car. And you decided based on nothing but that she deserved to be humiliated. That's not a mistake. That's not an accident. That's who you are. And now everyone knows it. The patrol car door slammed shut. The crowd parted as the vehicle pulled away, carrying Ryan Hayes toward a future he never imagined. A future behind bars. Michael turned to his wife. The cameras kept rolling, but for a moment it was just the two of them. Are you okay? Denise managed a small, exhausted smile. I've had better Saturday nights. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight. Let many years of marriage speak louder than any words. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I should have stopped it sooner. You stopped it exactly when you needed to. She pulled back to look at him. Now the whole world knows what happens in the shadows. Now everyone can see. Michael nodded slowly. This wasn't just about one corrupt officer. This was about a system, a pattern, a disease that had been allowed to fester for far too long. Tonight, they had exposed it to the light. Tomorrow, the real work of healing would begin. Shortly after, Ryan Hayes stood before a federal judge. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. National news cameras lined every wall. Reporters from every major network jostled for position. The story had exploded across social media. The racist cop who arrested his own chief without knowing it. Millions had watched the footage. Millions more had shared it. The hashtag trended worldwide for days. The charges were read aloud, one by one. Each word another nail in the coffin of Hayes' career. His freedom, his life as he knew it. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law. False arrest and imprisonment. Filing a false police report. Evidence tampering. The investigation had confirmed that Hayes manually disabled his dash cam before initiating the stop. Aggravated assault. Conspiracy to violate civil rights. The federal prosecutor rose to address the court. Your Honor, the defendant is not simply a bad officer who made a mistake. He is the product and the symbol of a system designed to protect abusers while destroying the communities they claim to serve. She held up a thick folder. 17 complaints over his time on the force. 17 victims who came forward to report harassment, profiling, assault, and abuse of power. 17 human beings who trusted that the justice system would protect them. She let the folder drop onto the table with a heavy thud. Every single complaint was dismissed, buried by the defendant's uncle, Sergeant Victor Hayes, who has also been arrested and charged with obstruction of justice and conspiracy. She turned to face the judge directly. The United States requests the maximum sentence. Nothing less will restore faith in the institutions that failed so catastrophically here. Hayes's defense attorney offered arguments for leniency, first-time felony conviction, years of otherwise acceptable service, family responsibilities. The judge listened patiently. Then he delivered his response. Mr. Hayes, I have reviewed the evidence extensively. I have watched every minute of every video. I have read every complaint that was filed against you and buried by your protectors. He leaned forward. You had 17 opportunities to change your behavior, 17 warnings that your conduct was unacceptable, 17 chances to become the officer you swore an oath to be. His voice hardened. You ignored every single one. You chose time and again to abuse your authority, to target citizens based on the color of their skin, to humiliate and degrade people who had done nothing wrong. You don't deserve leniency. You deserve accountability. The sentence came down. 7 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, permanent ban from any law enforcement position in the United States. Peace officer certification, permanently revoked. As the bailiffs led Hayes away in handcuffs, the same model he had used on Denise, the courtroom erupted in applause. But Hayes wasn't the only one who faced justice. Later, Sergeant Victor Hayes, Ryan's uncle and protector, was arrested at his home in front of his wife and grandchildren. The charges: obstruction of justice, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, dereliction of duty, evidence tampering. For years, Victor had buried complaints against his nephew. He had intimidated witnesses. He had falsified records. He had ensured that Ryan never faced consequences for his actions. His sentence: 3 years in federal prison, complete forfeiture of his pension. Decades of service erased. The domino effect continued. The police union that had protected officers like Ryan Hayes came under federal investigation. Internal review processes were overhauled. Civilian oversight boards were given genuine authority. 6 previous victims came forward with lawsuits. People who had been profiled, harassed, and brutalized by Ryan Hayes over the years. People who had been too afraid to speak out before. The combined settlements totaled millions. Chief Michael Patterson announced the most comprehensive reform package in Houston Police Department history. Body cameras would be mandatory for every traffic stop, every citizen interaction, every moment on duty. No exceptions, no malfunctions. Every citizen complaint would trigger an automatic external review by civilian oversight. No more internal investigations. No more protecting the brotherhood. An early warning system would flag officers with multiple complaints for immediate intervention, retraining, or termination. The results spoke for themselves. Over the following years, citizen complaints against Houston PD dropped significantly. Misconduct findings increased not because there was more misconduct, but because it was finally being documented, investigated, and addressed. The system was changing slowly, painfully. But it was changing. Officer Claire Bennett testified at both trials. She held nothing back. She described every stop, every harassment, every abuse she had witnessed during her time with Hayes. She named names. She cited dates. She provided evidence. The backlash was swift and brutal. The police union tried to silence her. Anonymous death threats appeared in her locker. Her tires were slashed. A dead rat was left on her windshield. She didn't flinch. She didn't waver. She didn't back down. At a department ceremony later, Chief Patterson personally pinned a commendation medal on her uniform. "Officer Bennett showed us what real courage looks like," he said. "Not the absence of fear, but the decision to do what's right despite it." Bennett was promoted to lead the newly created Community Relations Unit. She now develops training programs on de-escalation, implicit bias, and constitutional policing. She speaks at academies across the country. When asked why she chose to testify against her own partner, she always gives the same answer: "Because staying silent made me complicit, and I refuse to be complicit anymore." Sometime later, Michael and Denise received news that changed everything. After years of trying, after countless disappointments and tears, they were finally expecting a child. When their daughter was born, they named her after Michael's father, Staff Sergeant Robert Patterson, the Army veteran whose burial flag had been thrown around like garbage by Ryan Hayes. Lily Patricia Patterson. She came into the world screaming, healthy, perfect. She didn't know the story yet, the story of the night before she was announced to the world, the night her parents knelt on hot pavement in handcuffs, the night they refused to be victims. One day they would tell her, and she would know that her parents didn't accept injustice, didn't stay silent, didn't give up. She would know that they stood up, that they fought back, that they changed things. Dirty Cop handcuffed a black surgeon and her husband. He had no idea who he just arrested. That's the title of this story. But here's what the title doesn't tell you. Ryan Hayes looked at Denise Patterson and saw a target. He saw a black woman in an expensive car and decided she didn't belong. He saw skin color and made assumptions. He saw an opportunity to exercise power over someone he believed couldn't fight back. He didn't see the thousands of children she had saved. He didn't see the many years her husband had dedicated to justice. He didn't see the family they were building together. He saw what he wanted to see, what he had trained himself to see. And he was wrong about everything. But here's the part of this story that keeps me up at night. The part I need you to truly understand. The worst thing about that night wasn't that Ryan Hayes arrested the police chief. The worst thing is that he had treated hundreds of other people exactly the same way. People who didn't have a police chief in the passenger seat. People who didn't have cameras recording. People who didn't have the resources to fight back. People whose stories were never told. Denise Patterson was lucky. She had witnesses. She had evidence. She had connections that most people don't have. What about everyone else? What about the black teenager who gets pulled over for driving suspiciously in his own neighborhood? What about the Latino family whose car gets searched for smelling like marijuana when there's nothing there? What about every person of color who has been humiliated, harassed, and violated by officers who believe they are above the law? Justice shouldn't depend on who you're married to. Respect shouldn't require a badge or a title. Human dignity isn't something you earn. It's something you're born with. The data tells a story we cannot ignore. Black drivers are 20% more likely to be pulled over than white drivers. That's according to the Stanford Open Policing Project, which analyzed over 27 million traffic stops. Black drivers are twice as likely to have their cars searched, even though they're less likely to be found with contraband. More than 1,000 people were killed by police in America. Black Americans were killed at nearly 3 times the rate of white Americans. These aren't opinions. These aren't political talking points. These are numbers. These are statistics. These are human lives. These are someone's mother, someone's father, someone's daughter, someone's son. So, what can you do? First, know your rights. In most states, you can refuse a vehicle search without a warrant or probable cause. The ACLU offers a free guide to understanding your rights during traffic stops. I've linked it in the description below. Second, record everything. In all 50 states, it is legal to film police officers performing their duties in public spaces. Your phone is a tool for accountability. Don't be afraid to use it. Third, support civilian oversight. Research shows that police departments with independent civilian review boards have significantly fewer incidents of misconduct. Find out if your city has one. If it doesn't, ask your local representatives why. Fourth, share this story. Not for views, not for likes, not for algorithms, but because somewhere right now, at this very moment, someone is being treated exactly the way Denise was. And they need to know they're not alone. Lily Patterson is a toddler now. She runs through parks chasing butterflies. She laughs at everything. She lights up every room she enters. She doesn't know the story yet. The story of the night her parents knelt on a sidewalk in handcuffs while a crowd watched and did nothing. One day, Michael and Denise will sit her down and tell her everything. She'll ask, "What did you do?" And they'll say, "We stood up. We spoke out. We refused to accept injustice. And we changed things." That's the legacy they're building. Not a viral video, not a hashtag. A world that's a little bit better for the next generation. Ryan Hayes thought his badge made him untouchable. He thought people who looked like Michael and Denise didn't matter. He was wrong about everything. And now, in a federal prison cell, he has 7 years to think about exactly how wrong he was. So here's my question for you. Have you ever witnessed injustice? What did you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you think, if it made you want to do something, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Because every view is a vote for accountability. Every share is a reminder that we're watching. And every comment is proof that we refuse to stay silent. Never underestimate the person standing quietly in front of you, in the shadow of that humiliating night on a Houston street. One truth rises above everything else with heartbreaking clarity. Never underestimate the person standing quietly in front of you. Dr. Denise Patterson wasn't just a black woman in a luxury car that night. She was a brilliant surgeon whose gifted hands had mended thousands of tiny hearts and given countless families more precious time together. Her husband Michael wasn't simply another black man in an expensive SUV. He was the chief of police, a man of integrity who carried the weight of an entire city's safety on his shoulders. Yet Officer Ryan Hayes saw only their skin color and made his cruel assumptions. That single failure of vision didn't just destroy one man's career. It revealed how prejudice blinds us to the incredible stories, sacrifices, and humanity walking among us every single day. This story leaves me emotional because it forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. How many remarkable people have we dismissed, judged, or diminished simply because they didn't fit our narrow expectations? How many quiet heroes have we failed to see? The real tragedy isn't just what happened to Denise and Michael. It's that so many others endure the same treatment without a chief of police in the passenger seat or cameras rolling. It reminds us that dignity isn't something you earn with a title or a badge. It's something you're born with, and defending it can change everything, from one family's pain to an entire department's transformation. So tell me, have you ever witnessed someone being judged unfairly, or perhaps felt the sting of being underestimated yourself? How did it shape you? Share your experiences in the comments below. I truly read every single one. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Together, by refusing to stay silent, we can create a world where every person is truly seen.